Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with Allison Williams, the law firm mentor. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live, which happens every other Wednesday over on our Facebook page. The second part here, in this bonus extended interview, Allison and I dive into some of the biggest ahas lawyers have when they're working with her on their systems. And of course, we touch on her ideas on systematizing marketing. In fact, there's 4 or 5 minutes in here that you do not want to miss. If you already saw the live, I'll put the timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. And of course, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can follow along with all of our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running a law firm. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. On this show, we focus on the business side of growing and running your law firm. So I'm excited to have today's guest, Allison Williams, the law firm mentor. You know, as a solo lawyer, it can sometimes be difficult to know what you should be doing next. That's why Allison and her company, Law Firm Mentor, offer coaching services that help lawyers grow their practices by providing them with the best techniques and resources to set them up for success. The founder of Law Firm Mentor and a successful lawyer in her own right, Allison offers consultation, group coaching, retreats, along with tons of other resources, including her podcast, which I really do listen to and it's awesome. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, not just a video, so you get updated when our next episode goes live. And of course, it never hurts for you to show just a little love, and please hit that like button on the video too. It does help us with the algorithms a lot. We've got moderators in the chat, so please ask questions and interact during the premiere. And if you're watching this in the future after the premiere, we do monitor the comments and we will reach out to our guests and answer any follow-up questions you have. That's because we love you all and we love getting to meet you online. And I'm excited to say we'll be in person again soon. You can find a list of our upcoming webinars, CLEs, and all our other events where we'll be speaking on our website over at gngf.com/events. We have an extensive library of videos, including extended interviews, as well as our in-depth GNGF tips series, where we dive into all kinds of marketing topics, and we have so much more over on our YouTube channel. You can watch those videos, well, after this interview, of course, at the link in the chat. All right, let's get to the interview. Allison Williams, thanks for joining me today.
Mark Homer, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So it's kind of funny. You had to hear this. I was driving this morning on the way to work, and you know how you have your podcast, just a ton of podcasts you listen to, right? You probably do the same. Yeah. And I'm going through it, and I knew we had this video interview today, but sure enough, I'm not lying. Your podcast popped up as the next one. I just had finished one, and it was just rolls to the next one. And your Crushing Chaos podcast popped up. So I always like to mention when I have people on, I actually listen to their stuff. So this is real. But no, I mean it's a great podcast. We should definitely get a link to that in there for everybody. But so yeah, the Law Firm Mentor, Crushing Chaos podcast, love it. So I think you were talking about marketing your personal story, which you've got. I mean, I love that about you in terms of how when on your law firm side, what you do and. There. So we'll get that. But I wanted to talk about something you talk about all the time on your podcast and just in your law firm mentor work is you talk about systems, right? Systems for law firms. So why do law firms require systems in order to run their practice?
Yeah, well, so Mark, you and I have a history together that I should share with everybody. I had the pleasure of working with GNGF and and so one of the things I actually picked up from that experience was how well you guys have your systems dialed in. And it kind of highlighted the answer to the question that you're asking me, which is why you need them. And it's really because of, I want to kind of frame this regarding what happened last year. Last year, the world shut down in various different times. And we all had an experience of that question mark of, where are my clients going to come from? What's going to happen to the economy? What's going to happen to my business? And the reason why I didn't have that same freak out that a lot of other people had was because I had a system, right? So when you have a system, you have the ability to have repeating, recurring, predictable, reliable information and outcome.
Yes.
If you don't get to the place where it's predictable and reliable, the challenge is that when something goes wrong, you start changing things to respond, but you don't know if what you're changing is actually going to give you the outcome that you desire. Versus when everything in the systems of your business are dialed in so that you can say, ipso facto, one thing leads to another. When something goes wrong with the outcome, I go to the source and I can fix it that much faster. So you have a certain level of ease that comes with business. And for a lot of lawyers, the practice of law is stressful enough. The last thing we need to do is layer on a huge question mark over whether we're going to eat next week or whether or not we're going to be able to hire somebody. And a lot of us kind of live in that moment to moment experience of it feels good right now, right? So I'm on a high, and then, oh my God, we're not doing so great this month. What do we do? And we kind of perseverate over the problems, and then we go spend money to solve a problem, and then we feel anxious that we spent money and not know the return on the investment. So there's a lot of kind of shooting from the hip that you can eliminate from business when you get to that point of having everything systematized.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that ebb and flow many times when we'll start working with somebody where, like, they talk about the history and it's, well, I spent a lot on this and then I got busy, or and then I didn't spend, but I created a ton of blogs and social media, and then I got busy, and so it's I got some clients and then I stopped doing any marketing or any because they didn't have systems, right, and they didn't have the repeatable processes, and that's just on the marketing side. Yeah, on all the other sides.
Yeah, it's with everything. It's even with people. It's like, okay, I hired somebody and it was really great. I got my great legal secretary by virtue of sticking an ad, asking her if she could do the job. She said yes, I hired her. It worked out great. And then the next time you hire somebody that same roughshod fashion, and that person comes in to be a complete idiot, or they commit malpractice, or they show up to work drunk, or whatever it is, you think, well, that didn't work out so well. I don't know why I did it the same way I did it last time. But here's the thing, if you don't know what led to the outcome, if it was just I did action and I got outcome, well, that could be a causative effect, but it could be a correlative effect.
Right.
It could be a complete coincidence, right? But you don't know because you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're doing with the hope of analyzing ex post facto and saying, well, if it worked, it must have been because I did something in that process. And that's not always the case.
Right. It's interesting because it's almost like, we should fail the first time so we don't just assume we're experts at all of it, right? It's like the hiring. The first time I hired, like, man, I must be great at hiring. Like my first 3 or 4 hires were awesome, and then you get a few bad ones. You're like, well, what's wrong? And it was all the hiring process. I just got lucky, right? And that's a great example. But yeah, if you had a couple of failures first, you're going to start digging in and figuring out why and what you need to change. And so yeah, that's interesting. But specific to law firms, what systems do you, kind of like usually recommend out of the gate, or what are the systems that you feel law firms really need to make necessary in their work?
Yeah. So the 2 things that lawyers always tell me that they want, and the 2 things I know that I always wanted when I was first starting to practice and starting to build my law firm, was I wanted more money and I wanted more time. Mm-hmm. those are the 2 universal gifts from the heavens that we all seek. And so, the more money comes from marketing and sales, mm-hmm. and the more free time comes from people and systems. So whether you have a solo practice and you're a super solo, it's just you, or you have a behemoth of a firm, 100 lawyer firm, you're always going to create more time by virtue of having people run things systematically, and you're always going to make more money by marketing and selling. And so what I tell people is that, you have to first figure out that everything in the business has to be systematized. Every administrative thing, every financial thing, every marketing thing, every selling thing. And selling, we don't use that word in law, but we should. Selling refers to our intake and our consultations process, right? So how we get people to hire us. But all of that needs to be systematic. And so what I tell people is you have to figure out how people get to you. And then when you figure out how they get to you, you have to turn on the faucet so that you get more of those people to get to you. Now that tends to be lots of different things, right? Mm-hmm. So you can do SEO, you can do PPC, you can do banner ads, you can do, networking, there's a gazillion different ways that you can market a business, but you have to figure out which of those modalities is effective for you. And then when you find the thing that works, don't just do that. You have to have a diversification in your marketing, but you need to do the thing that's working the fastest, the best, most, and the thing that's working the least effective, the least, or perhaps not at all. And once you figure out where you're going to spend your time and your money, then you can start to really create systems around that activity. So a lot of people say, I want to start systematizing right away. I want to get chaos out of my business right away. And I'm like, well, if you're making $2, you don't have enough to be systematizing. Like you need to be out there hustling to get money in, right?
Right.
But once you have enough coming in that you're taking care of your base expenses and those are the people that you employ, then you have the ability to say, all right, where do I go to juice my profit? Where do I go to start really exponentially increasing what I have? And that's really where systems are brilliant, because even if you're systematizing something that's not a direct marketing activity or sales activity, even systematizing the people in your business creates more money for you.
Right.
And a perfect example is when you start saying, okay, we're going to have a block of time where we're going to interface with our paralegals to go over the work in the firm. Well, when you're doing that, people are directed, they're focused, they're energized around that activity. They're not running back and forth, shooting off 5 or 10 different emails throughout the course of a day to get answers to basic questions. And you don't realize how much time that interruption factor takes out of your day. So when you build in a system around how you communicate, you actually create more money around the time that you are actually doing the communication. You actually end up billing more, or if you're a flat fee firm, you end up processing more, or if you're in a contingency firm, you end up becoming more efficient with time. Right. So your time on desk goes down. But whatever your metric is, you create more time from being more efficient, and that is a system that generates more money for you. So it's always about driving in time and money with every system that you create.
So time and money. And the interesting thing that you talked about, like in those kind of like 2 answers on around systems, is the more you do this, the more you have like data, I guess, for like about, you have the information to know where the changes need to happen, or know if something kind of went wrong. For example, like, oh, you replace somebody who answered the phones, and suddenly, if your conversion rates go down, or the consultation, like leads to consultation, whatever number that you've gotten your systems down, you would know that, well, maybe it's, I didn't train the person well enough when I replaced the person on the phones, or whatever, like having these metrics in place because of the systems, you can identify things going a little sideways faster than, like you said, like down the road, something goes wrong, you just kind of guess at what you're fixing. So like, I love that, like you need the systems to kind of get a consistent metric, and the metrics can really, really drive a lot of decisions.
Yeah, the metrics and also the reactionism, right? So I think a lot of lawyers are, they kind of fall into 2 camps. You have the people that as soon as somebody sneezes out of turn, you fly off the handle and you become a raving lunatic. And then you have the other people that, someone has been coming to work late, leaving early, taking naps at lunchtime, and they are barely able to pay their own salary, let alone produce profit for the business. And you say, well, I don't know if is it me or is it them? I don't know if I was a better boss, maybe they would be better, and I just can't figure out how to get them there. So you have those 2 extremes, right? And there are, of course, people in between. But if you knew that you were holding someone accountable to a system, right? If instead of it being a personal attack on you that this person wasn't performing, and instead of you assuming that it's a personal attack on them that they're not performing, that they must be less than, that they must not care, you could actually see why they aren't performing. You could ask probing questions. You could look at what's not being done and say, okay, this is not being done. Why do we not have this compliance that we need? Is it because of lack of knowledge, lack of investment, lack of energy, lack of training? And those things become evident when you design a system that is designed to give you the outcome of the person being able to perform. But a lot of times we just stick a person at a job and we say, here, I'm paying you, so therefore you should be happy to readily provide exactly what I want. And if I don't ask for it appropriately, you're supposed to figure it out, and that's a real problem.
Love it. So, like one of your answers there was like, well, everything can be systematized, right? Like, you need systems in all aspects of your law firm. But where should a lawyer start? I mean, like that's a lot of stuff. Like if I would say, okay, what's the first system I should be attacking, or where, or are there some questions they should think about in terms of identifying that first system?
Yeah. So ironically, we just taught a masterclass on systems in the Law Firm Mentor Movement Facebook group. And one of the things that I said to everyone that was kind of shocking to people is don't start where you're comfortable. Like, don't just start knocking things off the list because it feels good to get some things off your list. You always want to start where there's the most friction. So you can have friction in all parts of your business, but typically there's the one thing that is the point of frustration, the point where as soon as you hear it, see it, know it, your eyes start rolling, people around it start getting really tensed up. When you see that that's that point of friction, you really want to go there first for a lot of reasons. So the first thing is the bigger problem in your business, the problem that's taking up your energy, that's taking up your effort, that's keeping you up at night.
Right.
That thing is going to deprive you of the energy and the emotional stamina to deal with the other things. So if you don't start there, that pink elephant in the room is typically going to make you less effective as a business owner in general. The second thing to consider is that when you look at friction and you have it across the board, if you don't have your marketing systems dialed in, you don't have your intake process built, you don't have your team up, then what you have to always start with is where you're going to make the most money. And I say this not as an unapologetic capitalist, which I am, but I say this really because money is what gives you the opportunity to create the most time and the most convenience for yourself. So you need to be able to say, if ultimately there's problems across the board, if I solve the problem of selling more people, I have more money available to hire people to do the things that I don't want to do. Or if I improve the process of my intake and I get more people scheduled to meet with me in my law firm, and I'm thus going to be able to convert more people just because I'm seeing more people, that gives me the ability to go out and, hire that offsite reception service that can take phone calls off and give me more time back, or that can give me the ability to hire a contract attorney and get more billable revenue in without having a full-time employee. But you don't have those options available to you if you are broke, because no one works for the love of it.
Right.
Well, so many of us do love our work, right? But we do have to eat, right? So you're not gonna staff up your firm and get high quality talent unless you have the ability to pay top talent for their efforts. And so you have to create that and prioritize that. So that usually means starting with sales, which is in taking consultations, and then moving quickly to marketing. And that's usually the order in which we advise people to start the process of getting that friction out of the business.
Interesting. So for everybody, listening, one thing that Allison mentioned there about what keeps you up at night, like I had a business coach once that just told me to journal, like just journal. And that was one of the questions he told me to put on there was what keeps you up at night? And it was game changing for my business. So like just getting that energy back, Allison, right? Like that, like just taking care of those one or two things keeping you up at night gives you an amazing amount of energy and kind of like gets you going on doing more of this kind of stuff. So I love that. And then the whole idea of like, yeah, I mean, it's to run a law firm the way you run one or do the things you want to do. You have to have the money side figured out. So like the kind of fastest way to the cash flow is very important. So
yeah, cash is still king. It always will be.
Yeah. So I mean, and we saw that last year, right? I mean, it when things came to a halt for people that didn't have the systems and marketing and those things in place. I mean, it was tough. I mean, we were talking to people who said, my phone hasn't rang in 6 weeks, and it was hard to hear, So with systems, like what are, you talk about them a lot and you're out there, like teaching master classes on this and coaching, lawyers through all this. And I mean, you help people implement all the stuff you're talking about, obviously, but where do you get like when people kind of like ask you questions, like what are these misconceptions? Like what are things where people are like, oh, I thought you meant this. It's not as hard, or maybe it's easier. Like what are some of the things people get stuck or misconceptions?
Yeah. So a lot of lawyers are creatives, right? A lot of us, especially those of us that became business owners, I'm sure this is not just lawyers, right? It's when you create a business, you are creating, right? There's a creative process associated with that. And a lot of lawyers, when they hear system, they think, great, you're gonna pee in my Cheerios, you're gonna completely take all the fun out of being a business owner. I'm gonna have a job again. I'm gonna be like hamstrung to this thing that now my mom is gonna be telling me to eat my veggies, right? And that's not what it is, right? It really is that whether you have an orientation towards systems or you hire someone who does, someone in the business needs to know on a pretty quick, consistent basis what is going on with the different functions of the business. And the sooner you get to that place, the sooner your mind can be at ease, right? So a lot of lawyers have the resistance around creating systems because they feel it's going to take away the fun, right? So that's one thing. The second misconception that's really big is that a lot of lawyers believe that creating a system means that you are now going to be able to hand off a system to a human to read and go walk away. And that's not it either, because the part that goes with the system, not just creating it and having it in a book, is that you have to create a culture around it.
Right.
So you have to have a systematic way of doing things, and everyone that comes in needs to learn that system. But if you bring someone into a job, on average, I think the estimates are 6 to 9 months for a person to get truly onboarded into a new job.
Right.
Between learning all the software, learning all the politics, knowing where to go to get what, it's done slightly differently at every job. So you can't just hand someone a book and say, here, read all about us, and then hope that they will just absorb it by osmosis. They have to live and breathe and do the work. And through that, they will then learn your systems. And so there is a process of bringing people onto your system. And then there's also the process of educating them that the way that we do things in this office is we follow the system until the system doesn't work. And if the system doesn't work, we don't just stop following it. We bring it to someone's attention who's responsible for the system, and then we break it and we fix it and put it back together again better. So that everyone is looking for, if this is not efficient, if this is taking too much time, if I don't enjoy this, how can I make it better? And then bring that to someone. You're not just sitting in the drudgery of your job and not enjoying it and complaining about it and slacking off so you can become that 70% of the American workforce that's unengaged.
Right.
Instead, you're going to bring that to someone's attention, or if you have the authority, you're going to yourself change that system and then A/B test. You don't want to just change a new system and hope for the best. You want to change it and test it, right? But test drive a new system and see if it works better. And if it works better, that becomes the new thing. But the beautiful thing about that is then the people who are running your law firm, when you are on vacation, when you are sick, when you are out of pocket, when you're just not in the mood, whatever you are, you're not physically there, the business is still running with the same level of quality, with the same consistency, with the same reliability, with the same standard operating procedures, so that other people from the outside, if they ever want to hold you accountable to something, you could say, the way we do this is XYZ, and you know exactly where to go to see if there was a shortfall in some way.
Yeah, the interesting point there, right? Like that you need a culture around it and things. I mean, and I actually do something very similar where when a team member comes on board, I'm like, look, we're very process oriented here and everything's documented and stuff like that. So follow the process, but you also are hired to be a consultant to the process. And it's to have that mindset of, it's an entrepreneur organization. If you have a better way, help us make it, or bring it up to people that can change that. Because it's not even like if it's something you see from outside, like, oh, we could do our marketing better, and it's somebody who does something totally different. We want to know that. But so building that culture, I think is very important, because a lot of people do have that. Maybe it's like the E-Myth, right? Like was it Gerber, his book, where it was very oriented around like build your standard operating procedures and run like McDonald's. And look, you systems and operating procedures and documentation and stuff, like over time, that's great. But you're right. You can't just bring somebody in and say, here's the documents and assume that your system's all going to run well, without the training, the culture built around it. I love that point. I mean, we're, pretty crazy about our culture, and everybody, comes in and we've got videos that you watch that are just specific around our culture. Like, you're not learning anything to do here other than here's how we work and why we work. And so I love that. It's so important.
No one I know wants to create the McDonald's of law.
Right. And so, but that is a misconception. That's a very common misconception. It's like, you need to build all these SOPs and then you walk away and that practice of a standard operating procedure isn't wrong. There's just more to it.
There's more to it. And the other thing to consider is that, the rate of change right now in the global economy is such that you don't really have the luxury of set it and forget it.
Correct.
So if you're standing still, you're actually falling behind, because time and everyone else is moving forward with or without you.
Right.
So you have to keep in mind that you're, to some degree, being in business is building the plane while it's in the air. Right. It is always looking for, and I don't want to say the next thing and the next thing like it's shiny object syndrome. It's not that, right? You can have consistency and continuity in what you have, but there's always going to be the next iteration of marketing. There's always going to be the next best way to hire. There's always going to be the next lifeblood of sales. And the way that we evolve has to fit the marketplace that we're selling to, right? Because once upon a time, it was kind of like everyone needed to be educated. So you were going to write long form copy so that you could give them a lot of data and details and show you were the expert. And then that changed when our attention span got shorter. So then it was stick a pretty picture on it. And the picture has to be 1,000 words. And then you get another 100 or so with your copy. And then our attention span got even shorter and it became create a video, so that not only are they seeing you, but they're getting that know, like, and trust factor from actually engaging with you when they can see what your mannerisms are and how you're going to be at the consultation. So this iteration has been, over the time that I've owned a law firm. My law firm is only 7 years old. right? So we're not talking about a lot of time. We're talking about a relatively short period of time. And if I had just said, great, I have a standard operating procedure for how I'm going to write text online and left it there, then today we would be outdated, right?
Right.
The people that are looking for us wouldn't find us because their attention span would have outpaced the copy that we provided to them. So it's yes, have your standard operating procedure, but it needs to be a systems culture that says we're always looking for a better way to do what we're doing. We're always looking for ways to do it faster. We're always looking for ways to do it more profitably. And those things are what we reward in this business, so that you alone as the business owner are not the one that's carrying the weight of all of these people that you're going to hire. You are actually going to be magnetizing the effort of getting your business built by virtue of people that are building it alongside you as a part of their job.
Right. And like, this as well as anybody, like, you're not looking for like the 50% game changers to the bottom line. I mean, like a lot of times it's 3 or 4 small things that drop 2 or 3 more percent down to the bottom line is a lot of money for taking home and changing a little bit of lifestyle, like, and you just do that every year. So it doesn't have to be like, the 1 year I've overhauled everything, which is why you said, like, start with the right pieces.
Yeah. And I think that's probably another misconception. A lot of people do think that it's, I've got to completely rip my business apart and like build it from scratch, like burn it down and start over. And many times there's a whole lot of stuff going wrong. So we do come in and look at businesses and we see, okay, wow, you were doing that on purpose. Okay. But more often than not, it is that we look at a business and we say, okay, so here's some areas that you have pretty good. Here's how to make it better. Or, here are some things that you aren't doing that you can add in that will make this other thing that you're doing a lot easier. It'll make it more profitable, make it funner. So there's always the iterative process, but you have to keep that in mind, and people have to learn that it's not just the owner that's doing that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that takes time. It takes time. So we are out of time on the Facebook portion here, but I've got a bunch more questions I wanted to go over with you. One specifically, I wanted to hear, like, you get in the field, you get your hands dirty, and you go help firms do this. I wanted to know what are those like biggest aha moments that you've seen for firms, and then I wanted to talk about, because we touched on it for a brief second, but obviously marketing is important to me. So you talked a lot about systematizing your marketing. So I want to talk about that. So if you just stick with me for just a few more minutes. We can wrap up the Facebook portion, but I can post more stuff on our YouTube channel.
Sure. Happy to.
Awesome. Thanks. Before we wrap up though, Allison, where can people find you online, or how can they follow you?
Yeah, so we're all over social media, and the company name is Law Firm Mentor. So if you put in Law Firm Mentor on any of the platforms, you'll find us. And you can always find us on our website at lawfirmmentor.net.
Awesome. Okay. So thanks. Stick with me for one moment and I'll be right back.
Will do.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to our Facebook page to get notified when our next episode goes live. We have new interviews about law firm marketing and the business side of running your firm here every other Wednesday. We're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, and you can watch the full extended interview with Allison Williams this Friday over on our YouTube channel. We'll be diving into more details about some of the biggest ahas lawyers have when working with Allison on their systems. And of course, we'll touch on her ideas on systematizing marketing. We'll see you then. All right, Allison, thanks for sticking with me.
Oh, thanks for sticking around and like continuing the conversation.
Yeah, because I wanted to get into, because I think this is like the fun stuff, right? So you've, you're out there doing this all the time with like whether it's your coaching or your team's working direct with law firms. When you help people do all this systematizing, like what are those, like, there has to be something you do where it's just like the light bulb goes on and things go like, oh, that makes sense now. Like, what are some of those aha moments or examples you got?
Yeah, so there's lots of ahas that people report when we start working with them. So the biggest thing on systems that I hear the most frequently from lawyers is that they need to include why in their system. Mm-hmm. And like when I say that to people, there's kind of like a visceral, wait a minute, because I said so is the reason why. And I'm like, no, it isn't. People need a motivation for why they are doing what they are doing. And in particular, the only way that you start to train people on the way that you think, right? Because we all have had that wonderful secretary who just, the person knew if we were sneezing to hand us the tissue. They knew what we were going to screw up in the document. They knew where we were going to be on a certain time if we weren't in our office. They just knew us, right? Well, part of what that person picked up on is that they got our why. They got the motivations for how we think and what we do and when we do the things that we do, why we're doing them in a certain way.
Right.
And the problem is, as you're growing a business, it is much harder for the 7th or 8th or 10th or 15th or 25th employee to have that same level of osmosis that comes from just being around you. And as your business is changing, a lot of the reasons why you do things change as well, right? So you might design your first system to be very protective of your license. All right, I want to make sure I have control over everything because I'm trying to make sure that I don't do anything that gets me sued.
Right.
And that is a valid motivation. But the way that you have that motivation fostered when you grow a little bit is different, right? So you build systems that everyone is compliant with rules of ethics and the law and all of that. And then your why becomes different. Your why becomes so that other people can take over the task or so that everyone understands the task. And so it's very challenging when you start doing things and you start telling people, hey, the way we're going to do it is this way. And then they just pick up on things, and then 15 people removed, they have a little microcosm of your thinking. Now, they don't really have the big picture. And that's the reason why typically as law firms start to grow, owners start getting more frustrated that, well, growing is frustrating because these people aren't doing what I want them to do. And I told them to do it this way and they're not getting it. That why is really critical to that. So that's probably the biggest one. Another one that we see is the amount of money that people can make when they actually start systematizing the work. So a lot of lawyers, they know how to practice law. It's not something they have to spend a lot of time on. If you've been practicing 5, 10, 15 years, you got the basics of what you're doing, right? It's not rocket science. But when you start putting efficiencies into the way you do your work, that's when you can start scaling your work very quickly. So perfect example is when you start working with a paralegal. And at first, there may be some very discrete tasks that you have for the paralegal, right? Paralegal is to draft a complaint or review discovery or organize activity for a client or call the client and get information. And yes, there's a value to having that work done. But if you start thinking about all that's on your plate, there probably is a lot on your plate that could be done by a paralegal as efficiently, if not better, than you that isn't practicing law, right? So you can have them do things that will save you time. And if you think about it, scaling a paralegal is actually for most practice areas more profitable than scaling a lawyer because paralegals don't have continuing legal education costs. They don't have malpractice insurance. They don't have travel expenses to and from court. They're not paid at the same rate. So you're paying a lower rate for the same service and you're able to get a multiple of that rate when you charge it to a client for far less expense than you would have for a lawyer. So typically the more experienced a lawyer is, the more you're going to compensate them. And that's true for a paralegal as well. But the rate of compensation is going to go up for a lawyer, not so much for a paralegal. And so what ends up happening is you end up getting greater talent, but you end up keeping less as you hire up the food chain with lawyers, but you keep more as you hire up the food chain with paralegals. And so if you train them up the right way, you can really, like, without changing the number of hours you're working, without generating more clients, you can make a lot more money. That's kind of the next big one. And then the third one, of course, is with marketing. And so I love talking about marketing because it's the blood that, you know, that runs through the veins of the business. And so what people oftentimes report to us about marketing is they're like, oh God, it's so expensive. I have to go out and buy something. I have to go invest. And I'm like, well, listen, you are investing, but the rate of return that you get on good marketing is much more valuable than what you're typically going to get as the rate of return off of a person or the rate of return off of a system, right? Yeah. So you need the marketing to be able to feed the business. And if you start systematizing the way in which you create marketing, then when you hire a company like your company, you can hand them something to market, right? So you're not saying, here, I'm a nice person and I started practicing law yesterday. Now go get me on the first page of Google so I can be a millionaire by tomorrow, right? You're actually able to say, okay, here are the things that I've been able to take that I've prepared, chop them up, get them on multiple platforms, cross-purpose, cross-utilize. And next thing you know, when someone comes along that actually wants to market, they can market something that already has a reputation online and they can help grow that.
Yeah, and as a marketer, right? Like if somebody has thought about their why like in for an internal reason, that why probably works really well externally. Well, I mean, actually, that was like, I think of your podcast was a lot on that, some of that why that I just was listening to this morning. But I mean, having that why is important. But also, if you've thought, if you've started to systematize how you actually, take a client through the process, like talking about that, like there's a lot of things people want to see when they've, if especially if it's not a referral, if it's a cold lead, like they want to know, why does this person do what they do? Like, can I know, like, trust, like you talked about? How does the process work? And if you have never systematized or thought about that, that's really hard to answer. But if you have that, it makes a lot of that marketing way easier.
Yeah, and you're so right about that. It's there's a certain brilliance to being able to say, and a lot of people think this is hokey when I say it. So I'm just going to put it out there, little disclaimer: don't turn off yet, right? But there's something that is a resistance point for a lot of people in saying that there's something special about you that attracts people to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I tell clients, listen, what is it that drove you to practice law? Well, I got fired from my job. Okay. But what made you decide that this is the area of law you were going to be in? Well, I like helping people. Well, there's probably a little bit more than helping people to this, right? So what is it that you can point to that, like, because you can help people by getting them out of jail, you can help people get out of toxic relationships, you can help people acquire real estate. Like, law is helping people. Like, there's more to it. And when you really dig in, like a lot of times I will refer people to Find Your Why, the follow up to Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and that exercises they take you through there to kind of figure out who you are. But once you put that out there, you're going to attract certain people. And for a lot of lawyers, they say, well, what if I repel people? Like, what about those people that don't want to work with me? Here's the thing. They didn't want to work with you anyway. They just didn't know why.
That's actually great.
Now they know why they didn't want to work with you. And that's beautiful, because the people that do want to work with you, they're sold on you, right? They're not sold on your gimmick. They're not sold on your sales pitch. They're not sold on the way that your flashy colors work well on your website. They're not sold on the beautiful call to action button. They're sold on you, so that when they show up, they're excited to work with you. And so most of your job in sales is actually already done for you when you have good marketing that leads them to something that says, yeah, this is where I need to be. And then it's just a matter of having some sales skill. You do have to actually get them converted, but the conversion part becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. And then, like we go down a whole path on that. I mean, a lot of the good sales skills, just learning how to ask really good questions and not talk so much, right? Like it's not like you have to learn some dirty secret of selling. It's asking a lot of questions and having the empathy. And if they're the right fit, like you talked about the repelling. I love it when somebody puts something out there that's going to repel the wrong person. And, especially you have to remind people, every person we send to you, you're probably going to have to call a few times, follow up, maybe get on a consultation with. If we're sending too many of the wrong people, like that's miserable for the firm. And you're not converting as many people, and think, like it makes you depressed. It's like, why isn't my stuff working? And but if you can repel and get that person who's perfect for your firm and matches your why, and then I mean that's a long-term client who's going to scream your praises forever.
Yeah, and it's really magical when you get that ideal client avatar and your message connects with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a lot of work on the front. And I remember when I first started working with a marketing company, I went into practice on my own, and I had built a blog on my own before blogging was a thing. So I literally just data dumped every article I'd ever written and every piece of content I'd ever created onto a blog, because I was starting to get a reputation and people were calling me for help. I was like, I want to help people, but I can't stop and have hour-long calls with lawyers all over, every single week. So here, just go here and I'll index it and you can find what you need. And then what started to happen was the public started to find it. So people would call and say, oh my God, there's somebody who does this. I haven't been able to find anybody who really knows it. Can you have a consultation with me? So I kind of became an unconscious competent. I was like, oh, that's my first website. So when I go out into business, I found actually someone found me. They solicited me on LinkedIn, and they became my first marketing company. And she said to me, well, there's so much here to work with, you kind of have a head start on it. What are people really attracted to? And so she kind of scoured my blog posts, because by that time I started blogging like intentionally. And she was like, oh yeah, so people really love it when you talk about this. Why do you talk about that? And she asked me, and I said, well, I don't really know. I see it a lot in court. She's like, well, no, like there's got to be a reason that you're motivated by this particular thing. Like, it's kind of the David versus Goliath. You fight for the little guy that's baked into your messaging. Why? And so I started really looking at it and probing, and I kind of went through my own stuff, right? Some of my stuff required a therapist. I'll just acknowledge it, right? Because I was helping people with child abuse because I went through some things as a child. And then I realized, okay, there's a value to this, and talking about that can actually help people. And so when we started putting out there that not I defend people who abuse children, but I stand up for people who are falsely accused. I stand up for people who are railroaded into a system, who say the wrong thing and are misconstrued. And it really is valuable to me to be able to help people on the other side of that. Then I started attracting people that didn't just consider themselves innocent, but they also considered themselves to be kind of the taken advantage of party, the party that was, kind of on the lesser end of power. And the lesser end of power then became kind of the theme for everything, right? The lesser end of power in the divorce, the lesser end of power when you're getting a restraining order, the lesser end of power when you're seeking child support, either because you have money and you're perceived a certain way because you have less power in saying that narrative is false, or you have less power because you actually have less money, and thus the resource is the lesser part of your power dynamic. But we fight for people without power became baked into everything, and then it became really easy to convert people. I mean, our conversion rate went from somewhere in the mid 30s to over 80% in just a 1 year of really tweaking the marketing, and it was really just phenomenal.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when the team was working with you, like on the branding work, and like it was very easy because you already had that figured out. Like that's unusual for, usually we're asking questions and somebody's like, that's the first time anybody's ever asked me like what I stand for, like, and what I stand against, and why, like all the typical branding, like the Simon Sinek book you mentioned was awesome. Probably borrowed a few of those questions out of there, but yeah, that is the first time many lawyers ever are asked those questions, is kind of going through that kind of process. And many don't even go through that process, right? It's like until they get a coach like you that kind of says, this is an important process to go through. So we talked about, like the importance of marketing and everything. So are there some things that specifically around systems with marketing that you feel like help drive? Because you talked about, profitability and growing up and revenue and stuff. Is there anything around with marketing and systems that really kind of like you think are directly scaled to marketing and profit?
Yeah. So what I always tell people about the system of marketing is that you have to realize that you're never creating one piece of marketing content. Everything should be used at least 10 times. And that is a minimum, right? So, and a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh my God, like that's a lot of content, right? If I say, if your goal is to get to 100 pieces of content every month, and it's like, how on earth am I going to do that and actually practice law and run a business? And I said, it's actually pretty easy, right? It's actually 10 pieces of content that you're going to create into 100 pieces of content. Yep. And so we start talking about what can you do that you can mass produce in different areas. So I always start with video because that's like the easiest example, right?
You create it. Love that.
Right. You create your video, then you have your video transcribed. And now there's artificial intelligence tools out there for literally 10 or 15 bucks. You can get an hour worth of content transcribed.
Right.
And so you take that transcript, and now if you speak for just 3 minutes and you take that transcript, that 3-minute video is one piece. Then that transcript is another piece that goes on your website. So that gives you a search engine optimization. Then you take that transcript and you break it into little pieces. So you can take little clips of your video and little clips of your transcripts. And now you've got 7 or 8 pieces from that one video. Then you take it and you blog about it. So, hey, we've got a video where we talked about XYZ. So you talk about the content that you're going to drive people back to. Then you go onto social media and you repackage the way that you spoke about it. So over here, you're talking about one element of the video. Maybe you're talking about the opening to the video, the first point.
Right.
Maybe the next piece of social media content is going to be the second point. Then your next piece of social media content is going to be the third point. And we know the platforms are different, right? So if you're on Facebook, you're using text and video and imagery. If you're on Instagram, you're using video and imagery. So you're going to like create a nice graphic around something salient that you put in your video. But all of that's going to tie back to creating 10 pieces, 10xing each piece of marketing. So that one video, I just rattled off, I'm sure somewhere in the range of 10. If not, there's many different ways that you can use it. Email marketing, putting it in newsletters, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But you're always looking for the one thing that I do, and you're mass producing it. And then once you put that in a system, then every time that you are creating something, you are creating in multiple different ways. And that's how you get omnipresence in marketing, right? That concept. And first time I heard that concept, I think it actually came from Scott Olford. That was where I first heard it. I'm sure he heard it somewhere before that too, right? Because it's not an uncommon characterization, but it's the idea of being everywhere all the time. Right? You can be everywhere all the time if every time you go somewhere, it is going to go 10 times around the moon, right? But you're not going to get there if every time I speak, that is one speaking engagement and I have to speak 50 times in order to be known by someone. Well, then, of course, you're going to have to spend a year getting to be known, versus if I take one presentation and break it up and then multiply it and multiply it and multiply it, I get a lot more done. And then when I hire someone like your company, I can say, here's my content library. And then you have things to do with it. You can make it sexy and you can put the right terms on it so that people actually find it when they're searching. And you can use those sites that will actually tell you what are the popular searches right now, and get people looking at the words, because we use certain words and we can start using certain words in our marketing, and you can help us be guided by that. So there's a lot that comes from systematizing marketing, but it can be fun because it doesn't have to be as exhausting as people think it is.
Yeah. And so first of all, real quick, if you just like watched, if you missed this extended interview and you're not watching this, then you missed out. So, but the last like 4 or 5 minutes that Allison just went over there, I think I've done like hour-long presentations on that. So you just got like an hour worth of like amazing marketing knowledge dumped in 5 minutes. So do that stuff. And that's from somebody who's done it in her law firm. So this is not just like, some marketer like me talking about it, right? This is awesome. So thank you for like boiling all that down. But it does. It makes it for a marketer, like if you do that, it makes it easier. And we're not talking fancy stuff. I mean, you can pick up an iPhone and just hit record and start there. Like you can grow into like fancier video stuff. But yeah, it really isn't that crazy. But for a marketer, if we get that information, we can do a lot with it. Then you can get to like the nuances that we never really get to, which is like, A/B testing landing pages and stuff like that, which, because you're not getting enough traffic because of all that omnipresence not happening, we can't get to the really fancy stuff that starts moving like the 3 to 4% needle,
Yeah. And, Mark, I love that you said that too, this idea of, that you can do the homemade version, right? And I know a lot of lawyers have resistance around just taking out the iPhone and saying, oh my God, this looks awful. Look at my chins. Oh no, I can't possibly put that out there. But one of the tools that I highly recommend, and I don't think this is not a competitor with you at all, and it would be a great supplement to you, is video socials. And so, Vic Rajan, he owns Video Socials, is a video blogging club, and you pay a de minimis fee. And when I say de minimis, I mean it is probably 1% of what you would spend for the average video marketing package.
Yep.
But it allows you to once a week record a video, 3 minutes. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it, so it's not immediately publicized. But you get to stick your name on it, you get to stick your logo on it, your contact information, you can put a little header on it, and you can practice, right? So you can come to a club and actually see what you look like, see what you sound like, get better, and get coaching around how to get better in that short period of time. And so a lot of people that start with video socials, they then get really comfortable with video, so that when you do want to invest in, the big multimedia company to come out and record the video of the stars of you actually feel confident in what you're saying, and you present yourself in a certain way. But I love video socials for that, because if we had that library of videos and we handed that over to a company like yours, then you'd be able to like slice it and dice it.
So much. Yeah, so much.
And so many fun things with it that get a lot of attention.
That's exactly right. And you probably know this better than anybody, but the big aha step when I see people start playing with video is they go from like, here's my frequently asked questions, to starting to talk about them and why they do what they do, or, like just more personality coming out. When the personality starts coming out, that's when the conversions go up.
Yeah, well, that's so true, because, we have all seen those videos where people are the stiff suit and they're saying that the way that we practice law, the way that you calculate child support in the state of Texas.
With the bookcases behind them, with all the law books.
And, yes, gotta have the bookcases, right? And we do that, and we don't think about the fact that, one, people are hiring people, right? Even though they want you to be professional, they want to know that whatever it is that you're offering, that they're going to feel comfortable with you and that they're likely to get a good outcome from what you have to say, right? Those are the things that they're listening for. They're not looking at your teeth. They're not trying to evaluate whether or not you graduated top in your class from wherever. And yeah, you're right. When the personality comes up, that's when people start building an audience. That's when the eyes start searching. And then you start building in that, hey, if you like this video, share it out with your friends. We want to get the word out that this is how you can protect yourself in divorce. Or we want to make sure that if you ever get charged with a crime, that you know that there's something you can do before indictment. And you start dropping little hints of share, like and share, like and share, like and share. And next thing you know, you start creating a huge audience so that when somebody does need your service, you're the first thing that comes up when people are searching.
That's awesome. I can't think of anything else better to like wrap up than that. I mean, it's personality, increases the conversions and, gets people to share. And when other people are singing your praises, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Allison, for sticking with me and going way longer than I know you initially planned. But this was great stuff. I mean, the extended interview here was, if they missed that, then they're missing out. So we'll have to and by the way, we will do a bunch of video snippets and do all of our Instagramming and Facebooking and blogging, and we will do all the stuff that you talked about. So if somebody wants to see how that's done, we do it right here for this video.
There you go. I love it. And this, by just so you know, I have to put this out there. I feel the need to put this proviso out there that there was no script of what we're going to talk about. But as we started talking, when you get like talent together, and I don't say that to like pat myself on the back. I know I'm talent, but Mark is really good talent, right? He has a great company, and GNGF really knows what they're doing. In fact, one of the things that I've always said is that you guys had the best process of any marketing company I've worked with. I love the way that you had different people doing different things, and there was kind of a leader, and I always knew like the balls were in the air, but there was somebody juggling them that I just couldn't see behind the curtain, and it was a seamless process. And so when you get two people together that understand something and they get to talk about the love of what it is, you oftentimes will have two completely aligned thought processes that come out, even though it wasn't planned. So
it was awesome. Thank you so much. Love it. And thanks for those kind words. Really appreciate that, Allison.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.